Hello, darlings, and welcome to Wake Up and Show Up Live. I'm your host, Portia Scott, but I am joined with my occasional co-host, John Henry Scott III.
Hey,
this is your daily show, giving you a daily dose of inspiration and empowerment. How is everyone doing? Candy, thank you so much for joining. Paula, thank you so much for joining, darling. Come on in. Love having you guys. We are super excited about today's show. Also, one of the things we want to know is, what are you grateful for? What are you grateful for? Hey, Tamika, darling, how are you? So since you're on the show today, what are you grateful for?
I'm always grateful for you. That is my default. It is the truth. That's
the easy way out.
It's not. It's great. It's the truth. It's the truth. I'm always grateful for my wife. That's not the easy way out, right? If the man ain't grateful for you, throw the whole man away.
Jasmine, thank you so much for joining. Val, thank you so much for joining, darling. Look at her. Hello, my pastor.
Hey, Val.
So you guys let us know.
Security.
Hello, Jasmine, Secretary Security. Yeah. You guys let me know what you guys are grateful for. You know how we do it. If I say something, if my co-host says something, if someone in the comments says something that is speaking to you, that is reading your mail, what do we say? Hello, darling. That lets us know that you are indeed listening. We are super excited to have you. We also want to keep in touch with you. If you have not, text the phrase "wake up" to 31996.
Do it now.
Out. And we want to hear you. We want to hear from you. We want to keep in touch with you. So I am so excited about today's show. Are you excited about being on the show?
I'm always excited about being on the show.
One of the things we want you to do is take our survey. So there is a survey link in the description of this particular live. We want to be able to serve you better. And the way that we do that is get your open and honest opinion. And we want to hear who you want to see on the show. Who are some people that you want us to interview? So we want to hear that. We want to know that. So take our survey. Take our survey. I'm grateful for marriage. Role models like the two of you since the Periscope days.
Way back when.
Yes. Grateful for being respected by my peers.
Love it.
And mentees.
That's
yes.
important.
Shakima. Hey, darling. How are you?
King.
Shakima's there. So let's get started with today's show.
Let's go.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So one of the things that...
Just full disclosure, I just know the subject because we had a discussion around the subject, but I have no idea of the content.
Yeah, I think...
So it's going to be cool.
Well, just be honest. Let us know. But I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about was...
What you want to talk about?
Being prepared for your moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whatever your moment is, I think it's oftentimes we think, oh my goodness, we have to have it spelled out. We have to be perfect. We have to have this. But when you hear somebody say that, like being prepared for your moment, get ready so you don't have to be ready. All of these things, what does that mean to you?
Ooh. We probably should have talked about this before, but so here's what I am learning.
Yes.
Is that I think it's not necessary. It's maybe we are speaking in terms of the singular.
So let me give you some of the principles, right? Because that
you go. Let me answer the question.
Go ahead, because I didn't know if you were stuck.
I'm never stuck. I'm never stuck. What I'm saying is that I think we often think of a moment in terms of a singular event, season, one thing, right?
Got it.
But what I'm discovering is that a moment often functions on a continuum. And so it's not just a moment, because within that moment, there are several different things that one must be prepared for.
Hello, darling.
That's what I'm saying.
That's good.
And it's true, right? I think that if you live long enough, that there's several different things within one specific moment.
Right.
And so it functions on a continuum as opposed to just being ready for this one thing,
That's good.
right?
So give me an example of that.
Absolutely. A moment of being married, right? We've been married almost 15 years.
Yes.
We've been prepared for that moment, but within that moment, there are different layers, there are different streams that connect to that one objective. So there's communication, there's physical intimacy, there's raising children, there's financial stewardship, there's spiritual management.
Right.
So we prepare for this moment, but I think
Of
there's
marriage, but
the work
there's
that
just-
goes into it. But when you get there, you realize that it's much more diverse or complex or even as exciting than the one thing by which we've prepared for. So there's a
Right.
degree of um flexibility and space that we
Mhm.
must have.
Hello, darling. I love it. So when we talk about, like you said, you kind of prepare for marriage, right? You prepare for college. A lot of people are going off for college. You
Right.
prepare to leave a job or join a job, join an organization or whatever. And I think it is important that when we think about being prepared, that we don't think about it as being perfect. I always
That's
talk
so
about
good, baby.
things not being perfect because it's so important, because we'll always think like, well, I'm not prepared because I don't have this. And I think, just like, let's just take the marriage ceremony. You do all of this planning, you do all of these things to lead up to it, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, financially.
For that
You've
moment.
prepared for that particular moment. But I'm telling you, nobody's marriage, nobody's wedding goes off without a hitch, right? And so does that mean, I think I look at it that way and say, so does that mean that we don't prepare because we know there's going to be a bump in the road, because we know there's going to be that? And I think that oftentimes we do because we want it to be perfect. I want the perfect wedding day. I want the perfect outcome. But if you're prepared, then I taught yesterday that it may not be perfect, but it'll be excellent.
Yeah.
And so I think preparing, for those moments. But say there's a goal that I want to get to, or there's something that I want to reach. Like, and how important is it that we don't just, you always say it. What do you say? A dream
Unattended becomes a nightmare.
That's right. A dream unattended becomes a nightmare. And so we throw out all these dreams, but there's no preparation. And I think one time you said this, you said moments are mismanaged through inadequate preparation.
It's so true. It's true. So here's what I think about is, let's try to connect the dots. I remember long time ago, Raleigh Jones said to me, I was getting ready to preach a sermon, and he said, and like, you want to be right, so you study, you prepare. That was in my manuscript days, right? And so you do all this stuff. And he taught me something that was so cool. He said, you want to leave room for the Holy Spirit. And so if we would take the context of the principle of what he was trying to teach me, and I think you apply that across the board for anything, you can only prepare so much. So I think one must be diligent and disciplined in how we prepare, right? However, we must leave space for where the magic happens. And oftentimes the magic cannot be prepared for. The magic is the nuance. The magic is the unexpected thing that we discover. Oh man, I responded to that. And that's the beautiful thing about it, right? So it's not that you enter into any season completely reckless.
Right.
You want to prepare to the degree, but don't marry it. Right. And I think that sometimes what happens is that if there's a such thing as over preparing, is that we prepare so much that we don't leave space for the magic to happen. And the magic is often the differentiator between good and great, between what is meaningful and what is just mundane. It's the magic. It's the thing that you didn't prepare for. It's the statement that comes outside of the outline or the note.
Right.
So yes, prepare, right? But I think the preparing is not necessarily what I script or in my blueprint, but it's the space that I leave
Yeah.
for the magic,
To
for that
happen.
which is organic, for the discovery of your own brilliance that
Mm-hmm.
often comes outside of the script.
I love that. I love that.
Hello, darling.
Hello, darling. I love that because I think, like for me, I was for me, I think even as we were planning for my entrepreneurial journey and
Hmm.
to take this leap and to do all these things, like I was planning and planning and planning. And I think that I must have obviously left room where I didn't think of it to
Hmm.
be able to pivot in case that
That's
happens,
right.
you know? And so I think I love the fact that you say the magic kind of happens like you plan, and
Hmm.
then you allow the magic, you leave space for that magic to
Yep.
happen. You leave space for that self discovery and things like that. But I think
Because 80% of Portia Scott Media was nowhere in your business plan a year ago.
exactly
80% of what you're doing, right? And so being
80,
prepared
yeah.
for your moment, actually, it was not necessarily just making sure you did the research around sound and art and the photos and stuff like that. But you know what I believe, this is just my own bias, that the biggest advantage to you being prepared for the moment that you're in right now
Mm-hmm.
was pushing pause and recalibrating and not doing anything for those first couple months. When I said take time off,
Yeah.
right? And so taking the kids swimming and breathing and just creating, freeing up mind space
Mm-hmm.
so that when the curveballs came, you were able to handle the pivots, with a degree of confidence and ease without
Mm-hmm.
losing it.
Yeah. I think a lot of us are planned too. I think if we take our experiences, if we take the life that we lived, they've
Hmm.
all been there are experiences and we bring them into everything,
Hmm.
right? And so oftentimes when we're planning to make a move, I think one of the things that we look at is that we look at these experiences that I've already had, and how can I take those experiences and
Hmm.
bring them in before I'm just going into saying, oh, this is new, or oh, I don't know anything, because
Hmm.
there is something, there's something we all know within these experiences. And so one of the things you talked about was the discipline. And
Hmm.
so let's talk about a little bit about disciplining the mind. I
Hmm.
think that as we prepare, and I'm learning more than ever, is that it is a discipline of your mind
Hmm.
and your mindset. And so how are some of those ways that, like, you're able to, we're preparing, we know we have these goals, we have these visions, and that we have these dreams, and we could have them all day, but if they're unattended, they become a nightmare
Hmm.
because you have frustration, you're aggravated,
Mhm,
nothing's happening, you're not moving, you're
mhm,
stagnant, and you're trying to figure out why and nothing's happening.
mhm.
And a lot of it has little to do with the execution of external factors, but more so internal
Correct,
factors.
correct.
So, like, how do you kind of,
Me
yeah,
personally, yeah.
yeah.
So
Or
I
how
think
can somebody, because sometimes you can be an anomaly. So, how can
what do
other
you mean by
people?
that? What do you mean by
Well, I
sometimes
mean,
I could be an
because, okay, this
anomaly?
is why I say that is because, like, you're just a disciplined person. But let's take somebody that doesn't have that level, like your level of discipline is I mean, sometimes it's, it's almost
I'm too disciplined.
not too, but it's kind of hard to,
Mhm.
like, if somebody saw it, they would be like, I'm a little, it's intimidating. So bring it down to the normal person, and how can they discipline their mind in that way, to really discipline their mind, because
Mm,
that's a big part of your execution.
right.
The external factors, the tools that you need to do, that's easy, but
Mhm.
it's more so making sure that my mind is prepared for my moment. Ooh,
Fair.
that's so good, that my mind is prepared. Why?
Hello,
Because
darling.
when you go before great men, it is not the external, it is the internal. And you got to know who you are and be confident in. I
Mhm.
am preaching. That's a word. Go ahead.
That's a word. So I will bring it down since I'm an anomaly, according to my wife. I
Just
think
be
it's very
you.
important to understand that the mind and the actions are kind of inextricably linked together.
Mm-hmm.
As a man thinketh in his heart, then so is he. So an
Mm-hmm.
output of my life actually is tied directly to the way that I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm trying to change the way that I think, it's understanding the link between the mind and what I do, or the output of my life. And so if I want to develop a discipline there, pick one thing that has nothing to do with your main thing and do that.
Okay.
And because now what you're doing is you're convincing yourself psychologically that I am able. And then once you develop that behavior, you can take that behavior and you can apply it to any area of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So, case in point, I stopped eating meat in what, October?
October.
And I haven't eaten meat since then.
Mm-hmm.
That is because I was able to learn how to be disciplined when I said I'm going to go walk a mile 20 years ago every day. So I chose one thing to do. I built up that discipline muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I
It can
built up that
translate.
muscle, I can take it and I can set it in any area of my life.
Yeah.
And it still works.
Yeah. And I think I talked a little bit about that
Did it was that
yesterday.
simple
That
enough?
was
Pick
good.
one
Yes,
thing
one
and
thing. You
that's
know, I'm
separate
about the
from your
power of the
main
one.
thing and do that repeatedly and build up that muscle.
So separate from the thing that I'm trying to do. So say for instance, I
Mhm.
say, "Oh, I'm going to make my bed every single day." And
Mhm.
you build that in, and
Mhm.
then those disciplines or that mental discipline, not just toward the bed, but it goes into something else. And
Correct.
then it goes into something else, and then it goes into something else.
Because
But
there's a
you're
conversation that's happening inside, right? There's always this conversation that happens internally that is often conflicting. I
right.
want to, I don't want to. I can, I can't. And so now what we've got to do is you've got to build up such a defense against the thing that will draw us away.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're doing now is you are kind of convincing yourself psychologically and also physiologically that I can do this because I have done this. That's what's
Mm-hmm.
happening. I can make my bed. I can put the top on the toothpaste.
Mm-hmm. Ours
I,
snaps down. So
I can't, I can't, I can't do those little things. So what you're doing is you're reprogramming the conversation that's taking place inside.
internally.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so true. It's necessary because there will become some times where you don't know what to say or how to say it. But if you built this up, then now you have this reservoir of hope per
Right,
se
because you can go
that you
back and
can
say, well,
draw
I've
on.
done this or I've
Correct.
been doing this. So
Correct.
when you were deciding, I'm going to walk a mile every
Right.
day,
Right.
then
When the conversation inside says that you can't, you've got enough proof. You've got a record that proves that you can.
so what happens at the beginning, right?
Mhm.
Because you haven't built a discipline muscle, you don't know. And honestly, sometimes you hear the messages, this is what you need to do, you need to change your mindset. And so you just gave us a tool to do it, right? It's that one thing. But I'm at the beginning of this
Mhm.
journey, and so everything is telling me, girl,
Mhm.
don't make your bed, you don't have time, girl,
Mhm.
you got to manage this, girl, don't do that,
Mhm.
because that's going to be 3 minutes that you could have spent somewhere else, or
Mhm.
you got 2,500 tabs open in your mind, your bed
Mhm.
is the last thing. So how do
Mhm.
you go from, I think, really 0 to 1 and combat those? And I'm using the bed as a, an example, but it could be anything.
Mhm.
And so how do you build that up in the beginning?
Mhm. Two things. One, stop doing too much. People
Stop
do
doing
way
too
too
much.
much. You doing too much. People trying to boil the ocean instead of a pot, right?
Right.
The idea is you need proof. You build confidence through
Through
proof,
proof.
and proof comes when you're able to see some type of a result.
Hmm.
And so oftentimes if you got 50 tabs open in your brain, you're not going to do any of them good enough to get you the confidence because you're boom, 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 jumping around. So, what I would offer for consideration is scale it all the way down,
Hmm.
bring it in and kill it at this. Get the low hanging fruit, celebrate that, and then move on to something else. And so I
Yeah.
think oftentimes what happens is that it's a measure of capacity,
Hmm.
right? People try to do too much too soon, too fast, and it
Right.
becomes overwhelming.
Right.
And so I would just think it's so critical to understand one's capacity, to be realistic. And you can be realistic without shrinking back.
Right. Right. Right.
It's
Right.
not
That's
that,
true.
oh, that's too big. No, you want to be able to have the big, audacious things that you want to go after,
Right.
but how you approach that certainly matters.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for that. Ginger said, Mrs. Bain said, great tools. Ty said, I do too much. I do too much too. But there's certain practices that I have in place, to help out with that discipline.
It's
But I
called a
think that's
husband.
important.
That's your practice. It's called a husband.
No, but when you're not around, when you're traveling, I can't use you as my discipline tool.
That's true,
I
baby.
have to
That's
have
true.
my own
That's
own
true.
stuff. And so I love it how it's like from 0 to 1, because that's like such a hard part to get to, is just that 0 to at least starting it.
Mm.
So we have that. And then the other thing was dispelling the fear, like being prepared, and the fear that goes with doing anything different, anything that we're not used to, anything that we're not great at. You and I talk about it all the time, is that, I wouldn't do stuff that I wasn't good at, because I understood my strengths, and anything else would make me feel. And then we go into my whole behavior type, having to be the expert, right? And so when I'm not the expert, I tend to not do those things. So when we talk about like really dispelling fear, and I think people should, we all have to understand, is that it is a daily decision. It's not just one time you decide I'm not going to be fearful. It is a daily practice. It is a daily regimen to say, I'm fearful of this, but let me, and how do you manage that? Because like in your life, especially more so in your career, you were in the army, then you were doing chemical stuff, you're like a scientist, and then you did culture, quality, you did culture, like in each of those things. I mean, when you look at it, yes, you were like, what did you do in the army? You like built
I was
labs.
a laboratory
Yes.
tech.
So you built labs and was in chemistry, and then quality kind of made sense. But then you go from quality to culture. Like that's a big leap in between. And so how did you manage that, dispelling the fear to even go in these different roles and play around?
I don't know if I have a single answer for that.
Your eyebrows are getting bushy. Sorry, I just noticed it.
I I I think it's important to, one, understand that fear is an emotion and not a monster.
Oh,
right?
Fear is an emotion,
I think
not a
that
monster.
sometimes we think about fear and we immediately run away from it, and we've got this psychological belief about fear that it is more powerful than it is. But fear is an emotion, just like joy, just like happiness. It is an emotion. And so I don't think it's necessarily just about fear, if I can say that.
That's good.
It's about how to manage my emotions and maintain steady no matter what. So if I'm fearful, then it's an emotion. If I feel exuberant and amazing and happy, it
It's
is
an
an emotion.
emotion.
If I feel hurt, it is an emotion. And so I think the idea of what I'm discovering knocking on almost 40 is that it is learning how to be steady despite the emotions, right? So whether it is an applause, whether it is a critique, I've learned, Paul said, I have learned how to be content. And so if I can look back over my life and my career, a key to my success is this idea of learning how to be content. So I deal with the fear the same way I deal with the praise. Thank you. And I just keep moving.
That's so impeccable. I mean, it really is that, you're just so steady Eddie. Like I try, like, honestly, I have to work at it, and like, that's the thing. It's like, he really is the yin to my yang, because my yang is all out there. Like I'm full of emotions. And so learning how to lean in, I think one of the great things about Cassandra coming on the podcast was that she talked about that, and talked about that they're just signals. That's it. They're just signals telling us something, right? Either cueing us to change something, to tweak something, to whatever. So, but I love that you're just like steady. I mean, put a 1 in the comments if you like steady Eddie. Put a 2 in the comments if you like I'm still working on that. I'm still working on that. And I am still working on that. And that's why I say it's a daily decision, right? I mean, sometimes it's a moment by moment decision. And I love, like you said, fear is just an emotion, not a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it becomes, is that almost we have created a face for fear.
Yeah.
You know, like we don't have a face for happiness. We don't have a face for sadness. We don't have a face for anything else. But when we think about fear, Shakima said too, yes, girl. Hello, darling. When we think about fear, we literally put a face on it. Like, this thing is going to get me. This thing is going to hurt me. This thing is going to ruin me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love how you just have, I think one of the things is getting to that place where whether they praise us or critique us is the same. Like, you don't marry anything.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I acknowledge
You
it.
have the emotion.
Yeah,
You know, you have the
absolutely.
emotions.
And I acknowledge it for what it is. And then I go. Otherwise, if it, let's use those two ends of the spectrum. Let's say that it is praise. If I marry the praise, then my pursuit and what I'm motivated and what drives me is that, man, I can't wait to feel this praise again. That's what's driving me. I'm motivated by that. But then let's say it's something as fear and criticism, then I'm driven by that as well. I have to get this amazing because I can't fail, or I'm afraid, or I'm driven by this. And so what suffers is the authentic beauty of the moment that I'm in. I miss out on the magic that will often occur because I've got this thing that's driving me. Man, they go like this. I'm going to get praise for this. I'm going to get an applause for this. Or are they going to like this? Is this going to work? What if something happens? What if something goes wrong? And I'm telling you is that the magic is in the middle. It's in the nuance. It's being fully present in this moment so that I can see, so that I can hear, so that I can discover, so that I don't miss when the wind is shifting, those things that are happening.
I love that. So Paula says, how do you conquer that monster? Fear is an emotion, not a monster, but how do you conquer it? I know you've kind of been talking about just not marrying it, right?
Yeah.
And so, but what if it's, I think that, I mean, fear is just held so much up. Fear causes procrastination. It causes us not to speak up for ourselves. It causes us to so much. So how do you even begin to, you know?
Yeah. You remember that going to a carnival or a fair, and there is this little game that you play where the groundhog pops up and you try to hit it and then it moves like that. Fear's like that. It doesn't always show up in the same place all the time the same way. Otherwise, you can always hit it and you can conquer it, right? But the idea of really conquering it or coping with it or having victory over this is knowing that I don't know where it's going to show up, but I do know that it is going to show up. So it is almost as if I recognize and understand that that is your role. That is what you do. And so when you pop up over here, I'm not shaken because I know that that's what you do. Right. And so the more and more that we kind of practice, okay, I see this. And the cool thing about life, whack-a-mole. Yeah. The cool thing about life is that life gives us it leaves clues, and then those clues become context, right? It helps to frame certain things. And so we can live long enough, and then we can frame fear for what it is, right? It is often a distraction. It is often something whose the desire is to get us stuck right where we are. But then on the other end, it can sometimes be a tremendous motivator and driver for it. So I think that context matters, but then also understanding that it's there. It is just a part of it. And the more and more that I learn how to manage and how to respond, and like I say, I'm going to be steady Eddie, right? And then I think that over time you have confidence, right? You have confidence. And I think depending on the context in which fear shows up, my confidence is like,
I've
ooh, I don't know, but I've whacked them over here, or
I've
whacked
done
it over
that,
there. I
and
may
I've
have missed
kept
it
it
here.
over
I've
here.
whacked it over there. So
I
I
love
think
it.
you live. I don't know if there is a silver bullet
Right.
for that, because
Right.
it shows up differently.
So we're at 30 minutes. I don't keep them any longer than 30 minutes.
Cool. Thank you for letting me be on
Thank
your
you
show.
for coming in to be a co-host. But you guys don't leave just yet, because I want to make sure that you guys are aware that tomorrow at 7 p.m., that's Friday, May 29th at 7 p.m., we are doing somewhat of a town hall. I know I'm tired. I know you're tired. I know we are all tired. And we are going to have an open and honest conversation around racial injustice
Mm.
and the mental health in the Black community, and how that really affects us, the trauma that we hold. We're also going to have J. Love Calderon, who is doing work in and around racial injustices,
Mhm.
who happens to be a white woman. So we want to make sure that we're having that open and honest conversation, that we're talking with one another, and that we're doing it in a way where we can try to figure out, how can we help each other mentally? How can we work on our mental health? But also, how can we make the changes? And how can those that are allies, those that are not Black, but want to do something,
Mhm.
don't know what to do? And so we're going to have that conversation around that, because I think it's so very, very important. Emotions are extremely high,
Mhm.
but I think it's important that we're able to have those emotions, that we are free to have our emotions, but that we have these conversations,
Mhm.
because we hold trauma that we don't even know we have. Every time we see a video, every time we hear this, it's trauma that is caused
Mhm.
to the community, to a full race of people. And so we want to talk about that. And then we also want to make sure that people who do not look like, do not have the color of our skin, but they want to see this injustice
Mhm.
ending,
Mhm.
and really talk about that. So you guys mark your calendars. That is tomorrow at 7 p.m. It is going to be on my pages, so you guys don't have to go anywhere. And just make sure you share it out when you get on. It's going to be a really, really good conversation, a much needed conversation. So I'm so glad that you will be having that much needed conversation. Oh, thank you guys. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Shakima. That was great. Thank you, darling. You're welcome, darling. So you guys, I'm so happy that you guys are here. You guys know we are here. Is today Thursday?
Today is Thursday Love.
Woo! We are here Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern time.
Mhm.
And so I just want to thank you guys. But yeah, I want you guys to mark your calendars. I want you to be there. I want you to share it, because I think we all need to have that conversation,
Mhm.
and having the conversation amongst other people, and in a different light, right? How is it affecting our mental health? So that we can be healthy, and that we
Was that
can
our sis,
navigate
Queen?
this. Was that Queen?
Hey, what
Oh,
up,
Queen, we
sis?
miss
Love,
you
love, love. Miss
too.
you too.
We miss you guys. We miss all our Boston family. I don't miss Boston. He does. I don't. Massachusetts. I don't miss it. It's really the
It's the
weather.
weather you don't miss.
The weather is terrible.
I
Y'all
miss
probably
the
still have
people.
snow right now, and it's May 28th. You remember that year it snowed for like 12 months? I mean, it didn't
Where
snow.
it started in October, Halloween.
Yes, and it didn't end until like May or June.
Like 2012, I think.
That was
It was
terrible.
crazy.
It was too much. Anyway, you guys know we end every show with this declaration: waking up is automatic, showing up is intentional. Today, I will show
Peace
up.
out, guys.
We'll see you tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.